Hello, and welcome to TV Dinner, the podcast, where we take 3 bites out of a show and tell you what we think. My name is Kalena. I am one of the hosts.
My name is Sean. I'm the co-host.
Okay, Sean, so what show are we going to get into this week?
We're watching Breaking Bad. I want to say thank you for letting me pick what show we're doing for the very first episode so that I could go with something crazy and cliche and popular that I love.
Well, it's really funny to me that it's like, oh, crazy and cliche and super popular, but I've only seen the first episode of Breaking Bad.
Yeah, and that's because I made you.
Yeah, that was like a year ago anyway.
Yeah, so what do you remember?
Not much, honestly. I remember them in the trailer, and he's like in his underwear or whatever.
Yeah, it's hard to forget Bryan Cranston in tidy whities.
Yeah, it is kind of especially hard because I remember like Malcolm in the Middle, and he was like, "Oh, everyone's fun dad," and this is like everyone's fun meth dad.
I remember in an interview, Bryan Cranston talking about how he was immediately hooked by the script, being like a man in tidy whities, driving wildly, bodies swaying about in the back.
Well, I think that's why it's so crazy that I never watched past the first episode, because it's such a good hook.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's literally like, I remember him and the other guy in the trailer, like in their underwear, and then they're like in the middle of the desert, and that's like the shot, the like hook shot, I guess, where they're like there.
Yeah.
And
do you know the premise of the show?
Yeah. I know a bunch about the later plot stuff from like what I saw on Tumblr. So I know that he has cancer, and I think he's trying to make money because he's like a teacher, and teachers don't make anything. So he has to make money to treat his cancer. And he makes meth because he's really good at it.
Well, yeah, the thing about Walter White is that he's this extremely brilliant chemist who's in this job that's like way below his talent level, and he's unsatisfied. And that's one of the hooks in his personality that leads to everything exploding out of proportion.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people don't like his wife. But from the first episode, she seemed kind of reasonable. She was just like, hey, don't sell drugs to my husband. Which sounds like, okay, that makes sense.
I think that was actually in episode 2.
Oh, did I see 2 episodes?
I think you might have seen some of episode 2, and you just have forgotten.
Oh, well, if that's the case, then, yeah. I don't think it's going to ruin the experience of watching the episodes over again, because I really don't remember anything.
Yeah. So, do you remember a particular phrase that, do you know, Walter White's, like, catchphrase that's become famous now?
I know the other guy, he says bitch a lot.
Not quite a catchphrase, it's practically a verbal tick with him.
Yeah, but, like, that's the only thing I can think of. Does he say, like,
he's a weird...
oh, it's meth time, heroes?
It's meth time, heroes, the tagline of Breaking Bad.
Oh, yeah.
And do you know Walter White's alter ego name?
Hubert Black.
Oh, what?
No.
Fuck, that's pretty good.
The answer is no.
Okay, so we're probably not going to get far enough into the show for this, but this isn't really an important spoiler. But later on in the show, he goes by the name Heisenberg.
Oh, I do know that. I see that on T-shirts.
Mm-hmm. And the probably his most iconic line in the whole show is when he says, "Say my name."
Oh, okay.
And the guy responds Heisenberg, and Bryan Cranston's like, "You're goddamn right."
That sounds fun.
It is fun. This show is ridiculous and funny in a lot of ways. I especially like Jesse Pinkman, even though he uses the B word a ton.
Yeah.
He he is also secretly a sensitive soul.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know a lot about it except for like, critical things that people on Tumblr used to have to say. But he's supposed to be like super cool in the later seasons and like not a gross meth dude.
Well, the thing is that he was supposed to be killed off in season 1, but Aaron Paul was such a like good actor with like so much like charm and charisma that they kept him throughout the whole show and tortured him relentlessly.
That's fun.
Yeah, I think a good summary of the whole show is the titles of episodes 2 and 3, which are Cats in the Bag and The Bags in the River.
Oh no, that's sad.
It's a metaphorical cat, so don't get that sad.
Okay.
The cat in this metaphor is the American dream.
Of course it is.
That was just me talking out my ass, but it might be true.
That sounds legit. So I'm going to propel us into the next part of the episode, which I'm just going to explain. So what we're going to do now is we're going to watch the first 3 episodes of Breaking Bad, and then we're going to come back and talk about it and talk about like if we would watch more of it. Obviously, one of us already has seen the whole thing, and just our first reactions, or I guess our second reactions on the first 3 episodes, and how well they hook us. So we'll be back to do that.
Yay.
So we're back. After a couple of days.
Yeah, well, it happens.
What do you think of Walter?
Oh, I have a lot of notes about Walter.
Ah.
I think he's a very interesting character. Because you can, I remember you told me that he has like his alter ego or whatever, but even in the first few episodes, you can see kind of the divide between Walter and his public life and who he's going to become. Because he's all, shy and not really particularly popular necessarily. And he goes through a lot of bullshit. But once he says fuck it, basically, he becomes just like way, way different.
Yeah. It's got a lot of stuff to do with the bullshit mess of a maze that is masculinity.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember we were talking about that, how, is his brother named Hank?
Hank, yep.
Yeah, Hank is kind of like the quintessential, like, macho man, and he berates Walter for being, like, feminine.
He makes a lot of corny dad jokes.
Yeah, but Walter doesn't want to hold a gun, and he's like, I don't remember what he says, but he calls him wimpy, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff like that where Walter is, is basically called, like, not a man because he doesn't stick up for himself or whatever, and it's, yeah.
A lot of elements of the show were designed to emasculate Walter in the early episodes. His behavior and, like, Bryan Cranston is the person who was like, well, let's put him in tidy whities because he wanted it. He said he wanted to have him look like as pathetic as possible.
Yeah, from what I know and from what you've told me about the later parts of the show, it's a really good distinction between Walt in the early episodes and Walt in the later episodes. Like I said, because he kind of just, like, says fuck it and starts doing what he wants.
Yeah, but he's still, like... he still divides it. Like, he keeps his, like, criminal life and his personal life as separate as he can.
Yeah, yeah.
I like what you said after episode 3, where you were just like, at this point, the story could be over.
Yeah, I find it really interesting how the first 3 episodes are kind of, I guess they seem to me kind of like a prologue, like its own chapter. Like if the whole show was a story, the first 3 episodes would be a chapter.
Yeah, I guess. I would say that that's because it's like, that's their like first venture into the world of meth, and it fails completely.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because obviously the show goes on and he continues his escapades, but it seems like he wouldn't at the end of the 3rd episode, which is also another pull to watch the rest of the show, because it's like, okay, well, how does he get back into it after this like really terrible experience? And he made no money.
Yeah.
He just had a bad time.
You sound like you're ready to watch more of it already. So you definitely give this one a thumbs up?
Well, I was going to wait till the end to give it a thumbs up, but sure.
All right. I'll just say that episode 4 is my favorite episode of season 1. It's really good.
Well, fine then.
I know, that's not helpful.
Another thing that I thought was really effective in the storytelling and making people interested was the juxtaposition of funny scenes and really, really terrible scenes.
Yeah.
Not terrible as in, like, poor quality, but terrible as in, this is fucked up.
Like, awful things happening.
Yes. Like, when Jesse's like, oh, why do I have to get a plastic bin? And, well, it's like, because it won't eat through plastic, obviously. And then they're arguing, and the ceiling creaks, and the bunny crashes through the ceiling, and it's like, that is simultaneously funny and super, super fucked up.
Especially because, like, right after that, like, Walt, like, looks Jesse in the eyes and gives him, like, a shitty I told you so speech.
Oh, yeah, super teachery.
Yeah, right after a fucking corpse has fallen through the ceiling.
It's funny because you don't think Bryan Cranston is the same as, is very dadly in this? Or very, Malcolm in the Middle dadly?
Mm-hmm.
And I still disagree. I think when he's in,
Sometimes he engages dad mode.
yeah, well, when he's, like, with his family and he's teaching, especially when he's teaching, he's like, I want to, reach the youngins or whatever, but he doesn't know how to be cool. He's just a very nerd dad.
Yeah. Comes a fuddy-duddy old man.
Yeah, it reminds me of the episode of Malcolm in the Middle when he gets, like, roller skates. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but it's like...
I'm afraid I don't.
He just, like, roller skates around the whole episode and, like, funky music plays. And it's super, super nerdy. And
sounds fun.
And that's how I imagine, like, early Walter.
He is a bit of a goofball, but, I mean, he does try to kill those 2 guys with gas.
Yeah, well, his life was in danger.
He, like, currently Walter is unable to kill someone unless he feels like they'll kill him.
Mm-hmm. Does that change?
Yeah.
There is one thing, though. There's one thing that I know about the later seasons. I don't know which season it's in. Because I saw this clip not during an episode, but I guess in another context. And that's like he blows up a hospital or something, and somebody, like, comes out and they're, like, all torn up.
Yeah, that's when the Walking Dead makeup guys were loaned.
That makes sense.
Yeah. There's actually a little fan theory that Walking Dead and Breaking Bad take place in the same universe.
Yeah, of course there is.
Because because of that like one weird moment where a guy seems zombie-like for a second.
Mm-hmm.
And because of some stuff like later on in the show, Walter makes blue meth, and you see blue meth in like Daryl's drug bag early on in Walking Dead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really buy the connections. I think it's just because they're on the same network that people like to say stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same with like, oh, every Disney movie is connected.
Yeah. It's just a funny little theory. That blue meth, real meth, people who really make and sell meth started making their meth blue to capitalize on this show.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah, kind of funny and fucked up. But the meth on the show is just rock candy.
Oh yeah, I mean, I didn't think it was real meth or anything.
Yeah, but they would run out of meth on the set because people couldn't stop eating it.
That would be me on the set, like, Kalena, stop eating the meth.
Yeah, like Aaron Paul, the guy who plays Jesse Pinkman in particular, was really fond of handing it out to people.
That sounds nice.
So what do you think of Jesse?
I think Jesse is a really interesting character. Because he seems like the normal, I don't give a fuck about you, basically, I'm just gonna do what I want. But he also seems, I don't know, a little like down to earth, I guess, even though he's like super fucked up druggy.
Even though he's a burnout addict, he still like shows vulnerability.
Yeah, and it's really funny, again, especially in the scenes when Walter is lecturing him and being very like teacherly at him. You really see his more childlike side, I guess, where he's you know, fucked up in all these ways, but he's still kind of a kid because he still, you know, acts that way, especially around Walter.
Yeah. The two of them change a lot.
Yeah. I mean, again,
you can tell from these episodes that they're both in over their head.
Yeah, definitely. Neither of them really knows what they're doing professionally. From different angles, because Walter doesn't know what he's doing as far as the business goes, because he's never done anything illegal ever in his life, ever. You can, like, you don't even need to be told that.
Yeah.
And Jesse knows the business, but he doesn't, like, know anything about being kind of an adult in the business, like a businessman. You know what I mean?
He knows some stuff about how the drug trade works on the street level.
Yeah. Because whenever Bryan... I keep wanting to call Walter Bryan Cranston.
Yeah. Hard for you to separate those two?
I don't know. I just like Bryan Cranston a lot.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
No, it's fine. Yeah, it's just interesting because Walter goes to Jesse because Jesse knows the business or whatever, but Walter, like, schools him on a lot of stuff, forgive the pun.
Right, like, they're both smarter than each other in some ways. Jesse definitely shows that he's not just some idiot throughout the show.
Yeah, I think in the first 3 episodes, that's still kind of to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
I think more personality on Jesse as far as the not just a total stoner idiot goes.
Yeah, he's a bit of a stereotype so far.
Yeah.
Which, you know, kind of goes to show that they hadn't planned much for him yet.
Yeah, you told me that they were going to get rid of him?
Yeah, they were going to kill him off early on.
That seems to be the case with a lot of characters in TV and movies now, where they don't plan much for a character, but then people like him a lot, so they kind of have to plan more.
Do you mean like Daryl?
Like Daryl and like Poe in Star Wars.
Oh yeah, I forgot that was a thing.
Yeah. I just think it's interesting. It's interesting to see what they do with the characters because they
Yeah.
don't have anything planned. They kind of have to do it on the cuff.
What do you think about Skylar?
Oh, good. I was going to talk about Skylar next. From what I know, a lot of people dislike Skylar, and maybe it's for reasons that I couldn't discern in the first 3 episodes, but I think she's really reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
um,
I think that people become more sympathetic to her as Walter goes more down the deep end.
yeah.
The one where he tells her to climb out of his ass.
Yeah, he says to climb out of my ass.
I was surprised by that scene. I didn't think that he started getting that way until later.
Yeah, like I said, a lot of it kind of seems like it should be like Scrubs fantasy style to me, where like it happens and then they go back on it like, no, that just happened in his head.
But no, it really happens.
But like it actually happens and they have to deal with it.
Yeah, that happens not just when he's talking back to his wife, but also when he like freaks out on his boss at the car wash and quits his job, and when he
like kicks the teenager in the leg.
Yeah, when he attacks the kid who is making fun of his son.
And I honestly like that a lot more than, oh, this didn't really happen, it was just like in their head. I think it's super interesting to see a character overreact and other characters deal with that in like a way that people would. Because in a lot of TV, people overreact a lot, but people don't kind of give it the proper credit.
Yeah.
But in this, it seems like people react to him the way that they should.
Skylar was definitely freaked out by Walter's actions, but Walter Jr. seemed to think he was pretty cool.
Well, yeah, Walter Jr. doesn't seem to be fazed by much. We don't get a lot of his character either. He shows up for like 2 scenes.
Well, he's just a pretty relatable, nice teen.
Yeah, I assume we get more of him throughout the series.
Oh, yeah. I fucking love his performance throughout the show, and, like, that's one of the reasons why I love episode 4.
Okay, that's good to know, because like I said, he's not in much of the first 3 episodes.
Yeah,
so it'd be interesting to see more of him.
Yeah, the most memorable scene with him in just the first 3 episodes is the scene where Hank tries to scare him straight.
Yeah, that one was pretty good, but that was more of a Hank scene, I think.
That scene has an unfortunate fun fact about it.
Yeah.
That lady, Wendy, who played the sex worker, while they were shooting the scene, a guy asked her about her rates.
Like a real dude?
Yeah, like a real dude.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. But no, she's a well put together person who...
I mean, you can't say she didn't play her role convincingly.
She participates in, like, fitness competitions.
That's awesome.
I don't remember the word for it.
Bodybuilding? No, that can't be right.
No, I don't think so.
She wasn't very strong. Anyway, about Skylar. Like I said, a lot of people think she's super bitchy, and I think she's really reasonable, especially, like, when she tells Walter off and when she... I totally lost my train of thought.
Was it when she told Walter not to come home?
Well, that and pretty much everything else she does, where she goes and finds Jesse. That one was what I was thinking of. Like,
Right.
I wouldn't personally do that just because I'm more of a shy person. But she's a pretty confident person, and that's another one of those like funny and terrible scenes. Because she's, like, telling him off, and she's like, don't tell my husband marijuana, and he's freaking the fuck out because there's a dead body behind the car.
Yeah, for that whole scene. And Skylar has no idea how close she skirted to, like, fucking just the horrible shit.
Yeah, I like that scene a lot for that reason, but she's an interesting character. I like her.
It's always fun to see Jesse bounce off of the, like, regular people in Walt's life in, like, the very few occasions when they meet.
Yeah, definitely.
Because Walter's always trying to keep him away from his family. and
I mean,
friends.
reasonably.
Yeah, so he doesn't often get a chance, but when they do meet by coincidence or whatever, it's always fun and exciting. But yeah, like they're all pretty great. Even Goofy, Hank, and Marie.
Yeah, I don't really like Marie so much, and I know she's
not
supposed.
a popular character.
Yeah, I know she's written to be kind of like a ditz and stuff like that.
And a weird shoplifter.
Yeah, she's kind of written to be an unlikable weirdo, but I feel like they're not going to. You told me that they explore kind of her klepto subplot.
Yeah, sorta.
But I don't feel like she's going to get much development at all, which kind of begs the question of why her character is included so much.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, she does get a relatively large amount of screen time compared to how much character development she gets.
Yeah. So I guess if I had a complaint, that would be it.
But she is always reacting to like the information that comes out about, Walt's strange behaviors and like the stuff that the stuff that Hank investigates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, she works as a kind of a device to relay information between Hank and Skylar and Walt.
Mm-hmm. I've already tipped my hat that she's not a very important character, so do you mind if I spoil something vaguely important but not actually in the show?
Okay, go for it.
One of the scrapped ideas for what the end of the show would be is her killing Walt.
Oh, that sounds... I'm glad it was scrapped, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Just because, like, in that ending, I think there wasn't anybody else available for that role.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds kind of more of like a shitty Shyamalan twist. Like, no thanks.
Yeah, I can understand that.
One thing that I also wanted to talk about was kind of the pacing of the 3 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Because from the opening shot, things seem to escalate really, really quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he, like, goes and he makes meth, and then he is trying to sell meth, and then he kills some dudes. Which is like, oh god, so much is happening. But
right.
Then they go back and deal with all of that stuff separately.
Right, like all of the fucked up, like, oh god, panic stuff happens in the first episode, and then it drags out dealing with the consequences of that for all of episode 2 and 3, like slowly dragging it out.
Yeah, and that's, I think it's really interesting to pace it that way, but I like it a lot because, like it's keeps your attention to have, those panic moments, like, oh god, but, shows that have those moments every single episode. It's like, okay, I get it.
Yeah. I forget who I'm taking this from, but someone once said that the way to make excellent TV is not to focus on the actions, but the consequences for those actions.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely can understand that with shows like this.
Yeah, I guess my biggest thing that I've enjoyed so far is precisely that, is that people deal with consequences in this show. Right. It's not the type of show where like everything goes back to normal at the end of the episode and everything's fine. The dumb bullshit that happens is stuff that they actually have to like sit down and play out.
Yeah, in some ways the series as a whole is like, a dominoes game where, just because of like the events in the very first episode, things butterfly effect of out of control.
Mm-hmm. So do you have any final thoughts on Breaking Bad? Do you want to discuss anything else, stuff later in the season that I haven't gotten to see yet?
I'm not totally sure. I wanted to ask you, have you watched the show Weeds?
No, but my roommate watched it, and I would catch an episode every now and then when she was watching it.
Because I was going to ask you if you feel like these shows are similar. You know, what you think about comparing these two?
From what I know about Weeds, it's kind of similar, but like Breaking Bad, like I said, has kind of those ridiculous and serious moments, but Weeds kind of seems more on the side of ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
More on the side of funny, I should say. But like I said, I don't know so much about it, so I could be wrong.
Definitely, it's like the biggest difference between them is that Weeds is like, I don't know, because Breaking Bad is pretty funny. I think
yeah, that's what I mean.
Weeds is a bit more silly.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like Breaking Bad puts more serious thought into the things that happen, and Weeds puts more silly, even though they both have elements of both.
Right, and both can be fun and good stories. The showrunner, Vince Gilligan, I believe is his name, he just commented once that like he had never even heard of the show Weeds, because that show started happening before Breaking Bad did, and he was like, I bet that, you know, like if I'd heard about that show, I never would have even made Breaking Bad, because their concepts are kind of similar.
Well, I'm glad he never heard about it then.
Yeah, me too. One last thing. So, for the audience, you're a pretty big fan of Game of Thrones, I think.
Yeah, I've seen every episode and read every book.
Right. You're critical of it, but you would still describe yourself as a big fan.
Mm-hmm.
Once, when the show got going, G.R.R. Martin, right?
Yes.
After some heinous acts that Walter White committed in Breaking Bad, Martin was like, well, shit, he's worse than any character in Game of Thrones. And then he publicly announced that, like, next book I'm going to have characters that are even worse than Walter White.
That's pretty fucked up. I can totally see him doing that.
Yeah, just like having characters who are horrible monsters as a badge of honor.
No, but also that's a total lie. I don't know what Walter White does, but Game of Thrones has been going on for 20 years plus, and before Breaking Bad came out, he had some pretty shitty characters. So no.
Really, I heard this a lot.
You heard that Walter White was worse than anybody in Game of Thrones?
Well, I also heard that later the Game of Thrones characters are even worse.
Yeah, I mean, they get worse later on.
But who knows? Maybe this is just an urban legend that I'm passing along without really thinking about it.
I mean, I can believe that George R. R. Martin would say that. The TV show definitely took some of the worst characters to the extreme. But even in the books, they had some pretty terrible characters.
Yeah. Talking about just like non-spoilery the rest of the show, I would say it continues to get fucked up and dark. Walter White continues to get more and more evil. And I think that it's great. It's a great show, and that it's fun watching the like rise/fall of Walter White and all the crazy shit that happens. It's great. So that's the pros, and the cons list for this show is that every significant bad guy is a Latino.
Ooh, yeah, that plays pretty heavily into stereotypes.
I mean, the show still operates under the premise that, like, Walter White is, like, the worst of them all.
Yeah, I know, but...
Actually, I think some of the really bad guys in the last season were white supremacists.
That would be fun.
But still 90% of the bad guys for most of the show are Latino.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where, like, it kind of skirts a line there, where it's like, you want to have more POC characters, but then if you make them villains, it's kind of fucked up.
Mm-hmm. Breaking Bad spends a lot of time later when the cartels get involved being careful not to make them resemble a real cartel too much. Just so that nobody, just so that no real cartel thinks that they're, like, insulting them or something.
You know what? That's probably fair. So with you, I want to get would you recommend the show based on just the first 3 episodes? Is there a difference between that and versus you recommending the show based on the series as a whole? So, for me, from the first 3 episodes, I would probably recommend it. I'd be like, hey, this is pretty cool. Let's check it out together.
Well, I don't think that I can put myself in a state of mind where I don't think about the rest of the show.
No?
I don't think I can look at these 3 episodes in a vacuum. Because it's impossible to do that because there are just so many, like, memorable moments in this show. It's hard to think of the smaller picture. Hard to not think of the bigger picture.
That's fair.
But I would say that, like, looking at the show as a whole, like, I would give it, like, a super recommendation. Like, twice as many recommendations.
Yeah, that sounds accurate to what I've heard you and everybody else say.
Yeah, it's not a difficult decision to make because this is such a sensational show, but, like, I would say that this is one of those shows that lives up to the hype.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know, maybe don't watch it if you're really not into white people doing crimes.
Yeah, I mean, I know people that don't like gore that still watch The Walking Dead because they think the story is compelling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so people like that would probably enjoy Breaking Bad.
Right.
Like I said, I really enjoyed the first 3 episodes. I would continue watching. I find it compelling. I find that it keeps you interested.
There's a saying I like that goes, reality is no excuse for fiction. And while Breaking Bad, in aspiring to capture that, like, gritty realism, does get a lot into, like, crazy toxic masculinity and misogyny, without going, like, I don't know, without really properly condemning it.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, it's still a great show, and, like, it's painful to say this, but, like, you just start ignoring that stuff after a while. Just in the context of the show. And that's horrible.
To be fair, I really can't think of any show that I like that doesn't have its problems, whether it be with people of color, toxic masculinity or misogyny or any of those buzzwords that I've just said. But I think it's actually pretty useful as a storytelling device. Because like we were saying, he's kind of like haunted, I guess, by trying to be this masculine stereotype. And it turns him into, like, a crazy guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually think it works kind of well as a storytelling device.
Yeah.
So...
You know how the Walter's friendship with Crazy 8 goes a bit further than you'd expect, and he's, like, cutting off the crusts of Crazy 8's sandwich?
Yeah.
After this, Walter starts cutting off the crusts of his sandwiches, too.
That's pretty fucked up.
Yeah, he keeps doing this throughout the show, where after he kills a person, he will, like, absorb some of their personality quirks. Which is, like, a really weird response to killing people, but he does it.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, I think that kind of goes into his character, though, where he kind of, like... It's kind of empathizing in a way.
Right. Like, you could also say that, like, as he gets deeper, he's, like, doing this to sort of, like, toughen himself.
Mm-hmm. Do it to, like, remind himself?
No, to like, he's like emulating these criminals so that he can make himself a tough criminal who can survive in this situation.
He's killing them and stealing their power.
Okay. And on that note, I think I'm done.
So this has been TV Dinner. I hope you enjoyed our first episode. Next week, we'll be back talking about Scream Queens. See you then.